Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer meeting for June 22nd, 2016. My name is Vilia Zamaitaitis, and I will be conducting the hearing as Planning Hearing Officer. We have one case on today's agenda, and the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels directly behind me. The hearing will proceed as follows. I'll read a description of the application and request. I will then read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will then make a brief staff presentation, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time period. Others in favor or in support or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time period. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers, and this will be within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will then be closed and the case taken under submission. If there is a variance on the agenda, the project will have to comply with all of the 4 required findings as per Chapter 30.43. And if evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets that criteria for a variance, the hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request has to be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to all property owners and occupants within a 500-foot radius. The subject property was also posted on site, and the notice was placed in the local newspaper. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or submitting written responses, having provided their name and address for the record. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letterhead. Under the appeals provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62, all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the decision date, and the appeals will be heard by the Planning Commission. Appeal forms are available in the Building and Safety Permit Services Division. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the hearing officer's hearing are recorded and are made part of the public record. Okay, which brings us to the agenda. The case on today's agenda is variance case number PVAR 1602628. The project site is located at 3440 Linda Vista Road. The applicant is Mayung Chung, and the staff person is Mr. Dennis Joe. I'd like to go ahead and just turn over for the staff presentation, please, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Ms. Zematias. If I may approach the board to give my brief analysis. Once again, this project's at 3440 Linda Vista Road, as you can see on the aerial over here, and we have radius maps over here. They're once again requesting a standards and setback variance for a new 2-story single-family home that's approximately 2,400 square feet. The variances and setback standards they're requesting are to have a reduced street front setback and a reduced required driveway length. They're proposing 3 feet 10 inches for both the setback and the driveway length. The minimum code required for the street front setback is 15 feet, and the minimum driveway length is 18 feet. To go on about the lot, the zoning of this property is R1R2, which is residential restricted for area District 2. It's a vacant parcel, approximately 9,200 square feet. It has an average current slope of 67%, which is very large, as you can see on this. I mean, large. It's fairly steep, as you can kind of tell on this section drawing over here, which we'll kind of talk about this later on. On the property, there is one sycamore at the rear, and there are three western coast live oaks on the public right-of-way that are within 20 feet of the property, which are along Linda Vista Road, as you can see on this site plan here, which is this green tree, this tree, and there's an additional one here where the drive will be removed to accommodate the construction of this home. An Arborist Report was prepared to review the health and the analysis of the new construction of this home. They're recommending that the tree be replaced at a 3:1 ratio on the lot. Staff is recommending at the satisfaction of the Urban Forester and the Design Review Board. Additional comment from the Urban Forester was to move the driveway or even narrow it away from the drip line of the northern western tree, which is probably the largest of the oak trees, as you can tell from this street view provided right here. Surrounding properties on this R1R zone are developed with single-family homes also as well. They both have about a single story and a two-story profile. The CEQA determination on this is exempt, Class 3 new construction. On to staff analysis about their request. The neighborhood, once again, consists of one-stories and two-story homes. And they have, and all along the south, on south of Linda Vista Road, they have a similar terrain, which is, it has a downsloping topography away from the street. The subject property is one of the few remaining vacant parcels. It is similar in lot size and topography, which the buildable area is relatively small and closest to the street right away. The proposed location is appropriate to the topography as it will minimize the landform and is sensitive to the appearance of a looming building appearance, particularly to the south of the property of Tyrell Place over here. So what they're proposing to do, as you can tell, this is the street grade of Linda Vista. What they were trying to do is take advantage of where it's the most flat portions of the property would be closest to the street right away and building it into the hillside and staying away from the steeper portions of the property, which is further away from the street, and minimizing the amount of grading. If the project were to comply with a 15-foot setback and 18-foot driveway, staff believes it would be inconsistent with the hillside design guidelines, as it will inappropriately break form with the lot, which it will break relationship with the topography. It will rise above, even further above the terrain, and it will create a more bulky appearance from Tyrell Street, which is once again south of the property, which is access to another portion of Linda Vista Road further away. The intent of a street front setback is to promote an attractive neighborhood and have a consistent streetscape and rhythm of the neighborhood. While the applicant is proposing a 3-foot 10-inch driveway and setback from the street, there is an existing pavement line, which is approximately 15 feet away from the street front property line here. So there's an existing property line here, and they're proposing a 3-foot 10-inch driveway, and the existing pavement line is about 15 feet over here. Now, there's a correction in my staff report and my findings. I mentioned that with that offset of the existing pavement line and the driveway they're proposing, I said 25 feet. Mathematically, it's approximately 19 feet, so that's a correction. It's not 25 feet. It would be a 3-foot 10-inch driveway they're proposing, and with an encroachment permit, which Public Works engineering had commented that they could apply for an encroachment permit to extend the driveway beyond their property line into the public right-of-way and meet the existing edge of pavement that exists right now. They don't have any plans of future widening of Linda Vista Road, so they do not have any concerns about their proposal. Well, the objective of the street front setback is to maintain appropriate light, air separation, and circulation and privacy among properties, and maintain the rhythm and the streetscape of the neighborhood. As observed from the street and the site visit and case files, the approximate street front setback along Linda Vista within the proximity, it ranges from 8 feet to 14 feet setbacks. Staff believes with the proposed setback of 3 feet 10 inch and the existing circumstance of the existing edge of pavement that is offset about 15 feet away, and if they propose to extend the driveway further in the street front setback with the encroachment permit, staff believes that the project can achieve the objectives of the code of the light air separation and in promoting the safety on the streets of Linda Vista Road. Last, the proposed development is in keeping with the design guidelines and landscape guidelines. The FAR proposed is 0.25, which is within the maximum. Staff believes it's sensible in size, scale, bulk, and mass, and site layout. As you can tell on the elevation, it has a roof, a flat roof, which minimizes the height observed from the street, and you can tell it is a little bit below from the street grade. It will minimize landform and alteration, reducing amount of grading as they're trying to develop the pad at the most acceptable, in staff's opinion, building location, which is closer to the street. And it will maintain 71% of the natural new landscape area as new drought-tolerant landscaping will provide at the perimeter of the new home. And once again, most of the landscaping here will be maintained as natural. Before staff wraps up their report and provides their conclusion and recommendation, staff did receive 2 written testimonies of objections, which has been provided to the file and is presented or provided to you at the dais right now. One was from Nancy Sanchez in short, and it was safety concerns of a short driveway from Linda Vista, and then another letter of opposition from Brian Duran. In short, it would be not compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, and he objects the street front setback and the driveway. Third, a voicemail from the adjacent neighbor to it would be the west, would be the property over here, was from Mr. Danny Hayes. He doesn't have any objections, but he did voice concerns about the health and the protection of this oak tree. He had concerns about the grading and water drainage on the site, that it would not impact this property or the surrounding properties, and particularly his property as well. Staff's conclusion is approval of both variances for these street front setback and the driveway length. This concludes staff's presentation. If you have additional questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Just a few comments and questions, actually. One is the letter received from Mr. Brian Duran. He's representing the Chevy Chase
Homeowners Association. Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that would be from the local homeowners association. Also, just for clarification purposes, all 3 existing oak trees along Linda Vista are actually in the public right-of-way. They're not on the subject property.
Correct. They're on the street right-of-way along Linda Vista and not on the property.
Okay. And they're proposing right now the reduced driveway with less than 4 feet from the existing property line.
Correct.
And at that location, there's a 15-foot, essentially, a public right-of-way curb face to property line at that location. So the overall driveway length would essentially be
19 feet approximately, and not 25 as a clarification in my staff report.
Okay, thank you. And your case file had a number of references to previous variances that were approved on Linda Vista.
Correct.
Would you mind
summarizing?
Yes.
Yes.
Those other variance requests and approvals.
Correct. Staff did look at case files of the surrounding properties, which are the most notable is the adjacent property, which is Danny Hayes, which is directly west of the property. It did receive a variance back in the 70s for I believe it was a 14-foot setback, or is it 8-foot? It would be the dwelling would be set back 12 feet, 12 and a half feet, and an 8-foot garage from the front property line. And that was for setback variance for his property as well, his property, and this current property that's in question right now. However, that variance was approved, but since this is a separate variance with a brand new proposal, that's why they're proposing a different variance application.
So essentially, back in 1977, when this variance was approved, they would have been able to construct a home with an 8-foot garage setback.
Correct.
From the existing property line, had they constructed the home back in 1977.
That's correct.
Okay.
They didn't exercise it. Obviously, it's been over 40 years, so therefore that had expired. But they did exercise for the adjacent property to the west.
Okay. And there were a number of variances approved along Linda Vista within the 300-foot 300-foot radius.
Correct.
In my recollection, I think there were 8 or 10 variances that were approved for a reduced front setback.
That is correct. As I mentioned in my staff report, the prevailing setbacks, it ranges from 8 to 14 feet. Most of those, or all of them, essentially, whether it's going to be by variance or prior codes, it does reflect what's out there built today.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. I have a number of speaker cards. I would like to call the applicant up first, please. Mr. Myung Chung.
Yes. Hi, this is Myung Chung. Yeah, my address is 9040 Terrestal Avenue, Suite 128, El Monte, California, 91731. And as you may see, the project site is on very steep, slope, and the more setback that we provide on, that's what we originally started with the regular setback, and we came up with like 50-some feet height structure with a very small house because of the, you have to have a garage at least 20 feet, and then you have 15 feet from the property line. It goes up, and the garage has to have 8 feet high, and and then we originally started with on the higher side because it's sloping down. Linda Vista is sloping down from east to west, and then it's going down. And the variance approved long time ago, it showed the driveway on the east end of the property, and then it will even create more higher building height because you are on the higher side of the site, basically. The natural elevation of the east end is higher than the west end. So naturally, if you start from here, the overall height starting from here to the bottom will be much higher because it's sloping down and it's high, so the height will be more than lower side. So, and then another thing is if you look at this.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to ask you to come up. Actually, why don't you?
Can I go over there and talk about it?
Yes. Yeah. For the sake of the format, we need you to go through the various findings that are required in a variance request.
Oh.
So if you don't mind.
I don't have that the order. I just have to go through.
Would you like to just kind of summarize your application? I can give that to you.
Can I?
Yeah.
So. And then, yes, please. So you will need to address the findings that need to be made for a variance request, and then afterwards you're welcome to come up and describe the existing site constraints and the neighboring situation. So.
There's your findings, A, B, and C.
Sure. Okay, the first is how will the strict application of provisions of any such ordinance result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. Lot is so steep, start from the beginning of the property, it's kind of coming down from the Linda Vista, coming down. If you look at the site, it has so much of public property because the street is way far from the actual property line. I think it's because of the topography of the overall the area kind of limit the street on the other side. Okay, so strict application of a front yard setback of 15 feet will make the vehicle hard to access to the building without introducing a bridge, because your lot is in such a way, starting from the property line, it started sloping down. So if you try to set back 15 feet away from the property line, if you put the garage there, you are already up on the air. So you have to use the bridge to go there, and it will only make the building really high and make a very awkward situation. So that's one of the kind of response to that the findings. And then B is what exceptional circumstances or conditions apply to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. Again, lot is so steep in this neighborhood all around. Most houses have minimal front yard setback due to a steep slope at the front yard portion of the property. As you mentioned, there are like 7, 8 variances that has been approved. And then if you go around the east side of the property, which is here, this is the property line, and then all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses has almost zero setback, or probably 1 or 2 feet setback, because of the same situation. The property line, the slope starts right from the property line. So if you try to move away from the property line to make a certain setback, you're up on the air right away. So I think they got the variance approved based on that site condition. And C, why will granting of the variance not be detrimental to the public welfare? The center of the roadway is far from the front property line. Even with less setback, there is plenty of space between road and the building. So granting of the variance shall not be detrimental to the public welfare, because there is a oak tree there, and there is some, I think, Edison Company electric boxes there, and so looks like there's not going to be any further, widening of the street. Knowing that, having the variance approved, granting the variance in this condition, actually, the good thing is on this property, the site is where's that? Oh, that's the one. Yeah, if you look at the site, it's kind of bow to the other direction. The kind of the value of the road is going away from the property line, so it gives you more. If you look at the west of our property, all of a sudden the street is kind of going closer to her to that property. So the actual distance from the street to the house is much less than our property. Our property is kind of the bending the other direction. So it provides more distance from the property line to the street, actual street. So even if our setback is not that much, you are still providing great distance from the street to the building, which will give you more than enough space for driveway. So, and then why will granting of the variance be in keeping with the objective of the ordinance? As mentioned above, even with less front yard setback, actual space between the road and the building is, in our drawing, is shown as like a 24 feet something. And Ms. Dennis mentioned that it's 15 feet. It's still 15 feet plus, as you mentioned, 3 feet 10 inches, 18 feet 10 inch. So it will still meet the intent of the code requires 18 feet driveway. If you look at the actual condition from the road to the building, if it's actually 24 feet some inch, as shown on our plan, which is off of a survey that we got from the previous designer. So in any case, it will meet the intent of the ordinance. So granting of the variance practically will not compromise the objective of the ordinance. And then statement of the additional facts. Strict application of the setback will push the building more into slope and will create basically under hardship, which is the exceeding so much of the height. So, yeah, I've seen some of the houses from the freeway 2 way high, like 3-story, very high. I don't know how it got built, but we try to maintain 27 feet maximum height by putting the roof on the flat and then make the building like a little modern looking so it doesn't look awkward on that situation. I'd like to just concur with the, Mr. Dennis' kind of findings about this project, and I'd like to ask your favorable consideration for variance approval. Yeah.
Okay, thanks you, Mr. Mi-young.
Mm-hmm.
This diagram is very helpful. So
sure.
Thank you for submitting that. I noticed the existing home adjacent to you. And this is the one that was approved with the 1977 variance.
Yes.
So this particular home, based on this documentation, shows a 5'6", although the variance itself,
says
I believe, was an 8-foot setback.
Yeah, that was a kind of based on the assessor's map diagram, which is sometimes a little bit off because it's like a superimposed based on the satellite map. So it may be a little bit off, but that's close, yeah.
I know that this is a little bit preemptive right now. I know if the variance is approved, you're going to have to move forward with a design review.
Yes.
As part of that application, you need to submit a 300-foot neighborhood survey showing existing street front setbacks, number of stories, the floor area ratio, and the lot size and the size of the homes for all the properties within a 300-foot radius on Linda Vista. Have you, by any chance, prepared that documentation early?
No, I didn't have a chance to do it yet, but knowing that this house has a very little setback, and all those houses has pretty much like a 2-story volume, some of them, not all of them, and then the one at the corner has a very high house. So I don't think we're going to have any. Even the house on the immediate west side, he has a very high, like a 2-story with some basement, so it's pretty high. So most house in the neighbor, I don't think we are not exceeding in any of the percentage or average, whether it's height or the size. Size, I don't know, but the way I see it, probably the neighboring house is about the same size, or could be more or less. Yeah.
I will be asking for that information in order to make a decision as well.
Oh, that's fine. I can prepare for that for you. No problem. Yeah.
Thank you. And do you mind?
Yeah, I have some more information, which is the little diagram.
Thank you.
The setback.
Okay.
This is the kind of a cut and fill. And this one, the blue is...
And we're going to have to ask that you speak into the microphone. Actually, why don't you come up to the board and pin those up so that everyone in the audience can take a look and see.
Do you have a pin? Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Danny, would you mind making larger copies of these? Just one so that we can put them up.
If you want to explain, you can use this one.
Yeah,
Please.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the side, if you look at the section view, there is a big mound over here, which is this kind of natural elevation of the site, and goes down this way. And then all of a sudden, there is a big mound over here. And then my client told me that at one point in time, there was certain grading activity in the neighborhood or somewhere else. And then they just found a little public space over here. this is not our property. Our property is starting from somewhere over here. So anyway, they put amount of dirt over there. So this is not natural, and it's not compacted. So this can be easily removed. And that's this area right here. And then there are some more over. It's kind of spread out overall in the front of the site. So that blue color represent like artificial fill. It's not a natural soil. And this pink and green is kind of on our side over here. Yeah, we try to minimize the site by cutting into the site as much as we can, so that we don't have to come out and going up higher. Yeah, so we started our driveway on this side. If you look at this is the front elevation, which is a north elevation, and then this is the line of the street going like this at street side. So actual house is kind of, even from the street, is kind of going down if you go to the property line. Yeah, so going down this way. And so we are trying to put it down as much as we can, so that from this elevation, we can maintain actually 32 feet. Yeah, I think 32 feet is the maximum that we can go. Yeah, 32 feet. So this is cut. The pink represent the cut of the natural soil, and then the green represent the fill of the natural soil over here. So this area is a cut, and this area is a fill, and this is the artificial dirt which will be removed. So total cut is the total cut is 183, and then total fill is 74. So we are going to have export of 109, which is equivalent to about 5 truckload of dirt. Yeah. So that's what we're going to end up having. And the overall project will not be very visible from the street. And we are going to have some landscaping covering over here. And then we're going to kind of respond to all the design comment from Design Review Board. So hopefully, yeah, it'll be acceptable.
Now, the cubic yards of cut, do those include the uncompacted soil that was dumped on in the public right of way?
Yes, that's included.
I believe there are 2 other diagrams that you prepared that are. If you don't mind speaking to
Sure.
well, please.
Sure. Yeah, this is the diagram that I printed out from assessor's map information. Assessor's map has the diagram showing the structure on the site, and then based on their diagram, based on my measurement of 3 feet 10 inch, I just basically reduced our site into same scale with the assessor's map, and then compare it. And then the setback is 3 feet 10 inch at the most closest to the property line. And then based on that measurement, this ends up 5 to 6 inches. So I just put plus minus because it's always a little bit up. Okay, so it's not going to be that much up, far from there. And then the one that I said is the Linda Vista Road on this red dot line is kind of going this way, kind of bending it this way, and then bending it that way. So when, this house, even if the property is going this way, the Linda Vista Road is way far from the property line compared to this one. This one is almost, their property is encroaching into the Linda Vista Road. So it's very close from the road. So even if it has a little more distance from the property line to the building than our proposed project, the distance from the actual street to the building, our project is a little farther. So even if you grant the variance for the setback and also driveway length, practically we are not going to have any problem with that physically. And then, as you see over here, when you drive further east to the Linda Vista Road, there are a few houses which is even worse situation than we are. And then most of their houses is in almost a zero setback because of the same condition of the site. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mio.
Thank you very much. Okay. If you have any questions.
Thank you. If I have any questions, I will call you back up. Ms. Palma Vincenti?
Hello, I'm Palma Vincenti, and I'm here to represent myself and my husband, John, who couldn't be here. We're at 3365 Figueroa Street, which is directly above the property. And I'm also here to voice the opinion of Dan and Edie Hayes, who live, I believe, to the west of that property at 3434 Linda Vista. And I believe that Mr. Joe's already voiced their concerns. But I will reiterate mine. And I'm not here in opposition to the property, just the development of it, but more to voice my concerns. Recently, I had a gentleman, Dr. Gerald Turney, who is the senior biologist and plant pathologist for LA County Department of Agriculture and Commission. 2 weeks ago, he came up and took a look at the trees, which concern me. I also had him come through the neighborhood and on my own property where I've had some tree mortality. Some of it is related to the drought. It's because of a infestation of a boar that's going through all of Chevy Chase Canyon, killing the sycamore trees, and another one that's infecting a lot of the oaks. So I've been a resident, and my husband and I, since the mid-'70s. I just feel very much to be a public voice for protecting the environment there, since so many trees are at risk right now with the drought, and also because of these boars that are something that there is absolutely no preventive way to kill them. So these are my concerns regarding the property. I understand that the proposal to take down one of the trees, which is healthy, is in order to gain access. But I know that Mr. Hayes was never allowed to even park under those trees, a public right-of-way, because of the weight of the trees or of his car would possibly injure the root system. So I'm just concerned about how construction is going to be done and what materials they'll be using on the driveway, on the pavement. Will you specify, for instance, that they'll have to use pavers instead of solid concrete? These are things that for somebody who's lived in the neighborhood for so many years, even though I know that you're addressing the fact that lots of variants have been given along the lines, but we learn from past mistakes. And some of those homes, maybe you would take a look at now and say, we should have never given variances. Mr. Hayes' home, right to the left, has had a lot of water damage. And there have been city engineers redirecting the water on that street and within the last year or so. So my concern is that with them coming in and out of the driveway, there's a lot of traffic from Art Center students right there at that property site. There's been lots and lots of accidents and spin-outs. So how are you going to get in and out of the property safely? Also mitigate any more water damage, because now it's a problem. So I would just like to, in conclusion, respectfully ask that you take my comments into consideration when making your final decision.
Thank you, Ms. Vincenti, for coming down. I wish Mr. Hayes, the adjacent property owner, was here as well, because they'd be...
He's out of town, and he left me a voice message and asked me to just please reiterate his message.
Well, thank you. Okay. We will be taking into consideration. I just have a few quick questions, actually. And when you mentioned boars, you are referring to what essentially would be wild pigs or wild hogs?
No. It's
or
a boar. It's a bug.
The insects, correct? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that in case anyone's listening, that we have
I didn't even think about
not only
that.
coyotes but wild boars running through the hills of Chevy Chase. All right.
It's an insect. It's
okay,
boring
yeah,
insect.
exactly. That's it's.
Okay.
All right, and then
Any other question?
yeah, cross drainage I know is not permitted, and the engineers, if the project moves forward, those items will be addressed for specifically in plan check.
Also, that big mound that's on there was placed recently. It could have even been placed when they were doing the engineering of the drains up there in the last couple years, and that is one of the things that this plant pathologist said should really be removed. And I'm just concerned about when this project moves ahead, that the existing trees on either side, that their root system is really protected, and where the driveway is does not impact because of the weight that's going to be on them to kill those other two perfectly healthy trees.
No, you mentioned Mr. Hayes was prohibited from parking underneath those trees. Who prohibited?
City of Glendale.
Do you recall which department or division? Just because that's not something that
I'll tell you how it
any.
came about, and that is there's a property at the intersection of Figueroa and Linda Vista that's across from the big green area that leads to the Fair Oaks development. And when he built it, he was parking down on the right-of-way and was asked by the city not to park there because it was dangerous. So according to Mr. Hayes, he told me that this man approached him and asked him if he would sign a declaration asking, could we park under trees? You're parking your car under a tree. They're not letting me park. So then I guess he was turned in by this man since Mr. Hayes did not want to sign. And the city got in touch with Mr. Hayes and said, you will ruin the roots of these trees. No parking underneath them. So he can let you know that.
Okay. Unfortunately, he's not here to answer that
That's
question.
the history of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Vincenti. Mr. Joe, would you mind reading into the record? I know that we received an arborist report regarding those oak trees and the sycamore tree that's down lower on the slope. Based on the arborist report, what condition are those trees? I believe that, just to confirm, that this has been reviewed by our urban forester, correct? And what his comments would be as well with regards to the proposed development.
Sure. In summary of the Arborist report, oaks 1 and 3 are in good condition. They gave a B rating, A being the highest. And oak number 2 was a C rating, which on their scale was saying it's average.
And oak numbers. Would you mind coming up to the dais and showing which are trees numbers 1, 2, and 3?
Absolutely. Hold on one second. Oak number 2 was actually, has a C rating, which is average, is the middle tree that's proposed to be removed. 1 and 3 are the edges.
The site plan?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
that's
please.
correct. Sorry. 1 and 3 are the edges, and oak number 2 is the one that's going to be proposed to remove. So this one has average. Even at the site, it has a tag. Nailed it to it, yes, when I did a site inspection. So I know for sure this is number 2. And 1 and 3, which have a rating by the Arborist, which is B, of what they put on the rating scale of above average. A would be outstanding.
And our urban forester for the city has reviewed the arborist report, and I believe what were the latest comments?
They concurred. Our urban forester concurred with the arborist record here. However, added to taking consideration of either relocating, not necessarily relocating to a separate location, either moving it away from this tree, which is at the northwest, or narrowing the driveway just to protect more of the root system of this tree right here, as I'm pointing right here. And to address what the speaker's comments, the Arborist Record had provided some mitigation measures. In addition to providing the 3-to-1 ratio of tree replacement, there will be they had recommended, which staff is recommending to put in within the conditions of approval, to have a protective fencing outside of the root tree drip line of 5 feet around it. And then also have supervision when trenching and excavations performed around the tree zones, and then not allowing any construction vehicles to be near the root system. I believe they said, hold on, no heavy equipment shall be moved within the protected tree area, and construction debris should be stored, disposed outside of the tree zones also as well. So there's a whole list of other mitigation measures. The tree report was included and attached to the report, which can be provided to anyone in the here, or was also online, provided on the website.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Now, just to continue along the interdepartmental comments, we just heard the comments summarized from Maintenance Services, the Urban Forester. I'm looking through the case file. Building and Safety just provided standard conditions or recommendations that building codes be followed, Green Building Code, Glendale Building Code. In terms of Public Works and Engineering, grading plan be submitted. They spoke in regards to discharge, new curb and gutter along the entire property, along Linda Vista, and just standard conditions with regards to any on-site improvement, in addition to the off-site improvement that it would require encroachment permits. Glendale and Water and Power, again, just standard development type conditions or recommendations. Community Services and Parks, that the public use facilities development impact fee be applied. No comments from Maintenance Services or Integrated Waste, I should say. So nothing of great importance or concern from the various interdepartmental divisions. So with that, the applicant has a rebuttal period. If you would like to come up and address any other remaining items or comment regarding to the previous speaker.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the neighbor has some concern about protecting, overall community and provide the necessary comment to, reflect their opinion about the project. And one thing that we can easily do is provide the paver rather than concrete or asphalt, which is a more solid surface. Paver it'll absorb the water, so it'll be more like a permeable surface. And then we can do that. And then, as mentioned in the tree report, the rating of the tree in the middle, which is the smallest one. And then visually, when I met with the arborist, he said the condition of this tree is not that great compared to the other two. And then he prepared the report and then reviewed by, I think, Annie Sheet of the city. And then she made a recommendation of add the tree in the 3-to-1 ratio, which is something that we can do. And then as for the drainage, since it's kind of downhill, as long as we provide the necessary the drainage around the garage area and the front area, I don't think we're going to have any kind of drainage problem. And then all the recommendation from other department is nothing significantly impact the development of this project. So I think yeah, with all that, I hope that we can get the favorable consideration and then get approval and then move on with the project. And then when it gets to design review, probably we're going to have one more round of refining the project into further detail. Okay. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. Now, as noted previously, I would like to have that neighborhood survey submitted
Yes.
in order to make that determination.
Sure.
So if you would please provide that documentation,
Right.
and that would be the standard. Standard.
There's a format that I have to fill
correct.
out. Okay, I can
And
do that.
it would include the setbacks for all the properties within 300 feet, the size of the lot, the size of the house, the floor area ratio, and the number of stories.
Sure,
so in
sure.
order to make a determination.
Right.
So
Great.
once that's provided, I will then continue. So at this point in time, I have no other speaker cards.
Oh, I didn't fill it out. So I wanted to say just one.
Yes, unfortunately, because it wasn't submitted before, then I apologize. But okay, so since the applicant has already submitted his rebuttal, correct, and we know that. So okay, we made note of that. So, all right. At this point, this matter is closed and the case is taken under submission for determination. You will be contacted when the decision letter is prepared and finalized. So thank you so much for coming to the hearing.
Thank you.